Hello, everybody. My name is Paul Hanton. I'm going to be introducing a series of videos on entitled Heresy and Misconduct in the Solution Focused World. These videos are about the contemporary nature of solution focused therapy and solution focused approaches. And they're just my take on some of where we've got to, some 30 plus years on from the original founder, Steve DeShazer, and in Zuckerberg and those at the Milwaukee Family Therapy Center. Um, this was originally going to be a book, and it was a collaborative book with myself and three other people. Um, um, we went through the process of meeting monthly and getting 12 chapters and 60,000 words down in a book. And then we decided amongst us that we didn't feel a book was the right medium, and that I felt that we discussed so many useful things, so many things that warranted further conversation. And you can put comments down underneath this video and I'll try and reply to them. Um, I felt there were so many things that we discussed and there was so much learning for myself that I wanted to produce this series. I intend to keep each video below 10 minutes, but obviously there's going to be quite a lot of videos. So let's get started. Why have the title Heresy and Misconduct in the Solution Focused World? Before I kind of go into that, I'll just give you a little introduction of how the title came about. I was reading some messages on the Solution Focus list board and some postings elsewhere, and felt that some people were taking solution focus in areas that I didn't really recognize as being solution focus. Now, that doesn't mean I'm right and they're wrong. It's just it didn't seem the solution focus that I knew, that I'd grown to learn about and to develop and to practice in both a therapy room and outside of a therapy room. So it led me to questions. And the questions that led me to were, how much involvement is involvement before it becomes something else? Who decides what is an involvement of solution focused therapy or a development of solution focused therapy? Where does the power lie in the solution focused world? Who's included? Who's excluded? And many other questions. So that was a premise. And the premise that I started to ask questions about was, when have I kind of said things that maybe other people didn't see were solution focused? How do I have a right or the um, um, authority to challenge others' ideas of what is solution focused? And this led on to lots and lots and lots of discussions with me and three of my colleagues. So just before I start going into those, which will be probably session 2 or 3, I'll give you a little bit of an introduction to where I come from in solution focus, which gives you some idea of my beliefs, my understandings, my assumptions of SF. I worked in 1992, 1991, 1992, 1993 in a street-based drugs agency called the Angel Drug Project, which was in Islington in North London. Many of our population were transient, homeless, sex workers, injecting drug users, and we didn't see them often more than twice or 3 times. At that time, Brief, who most of you will know about, were called a Brief Therapy Centre, and they practiced in central London. And our clinical director at the time thought it would be a good idea if we went along and all had some training in this brief therapy stuff. I wasn't at that point a therapist. I had no intention of being a therapist. I'd done some training in both CBT and EGAN skilled helper and decided really therapy wasn't my thing. I thought it was a little bit introspective. I thought it was a little bit self-indulgent. I thought it was not very centered around the needs for people that came. It was more centered around the therapists and making themselves important. We'll let that go for now. I went on this 2-day solution focus course with Harvey, Chris, and Evan, and came away with more questions when I started. This was back in 1993. At that time, I remember having quite a heated debate with Harvey about the idea of assumptions in solution focus work. And he said, no, we don't have any assumptions. We start without assumptions. We start with a clean slate. I didn't believe that was possible. what I did believe was possible. We had assumptions. All of us have assumptions are built in, an inbuilt bias, an inbuilt prejudice, an inbuilt understanding of the people we were seeing. I wasn't at that point probably confident enough to articulate my thoughts around that, and I would say that the conversation we had wasn't very productive. Nonetheless, I learned a lot on 2 days, and I questioned how this could be possible, how we could actually get to somewhere very quickly with somebody and make some movement. I found that strange. Um, Nevertheless, there was something telling me in the back of my head this was useful. This was different from the sort of therapy I've been learning. This was less directed, less expert led, and that excited me a little bit. And I went back to work, and we typically opened at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, worked through till 7. Um, Generally, every day we had a debrief because there'd be an incident. Somebody would get hurt, or somebody would be overdosing, or somebody would be in trouble with the police, or it'd be some sort of incident, but we'd have to debrief. And it was really quite stressful work. I think the turnover was about 11 months for most employees, and I was there for about 3.5 years. But I started using some of the questions in Solution Focus, and I started asking scaling questions, and I started asking the miracle question. Although therein lies the story itself. The first time I asked a miracle question, um, a young man said to me, "Oh, when I wake up, my granddad would still be alive." And I went, oh," and I stumbled, and I didn't know what to say. And I didn't ask a miracle question for a good few months, maybe a year or two actually afterwards. But I asked various versions of a miracle question. So, what would things look like when they're better, and so on. And I used some of the techniques, but I wouldn't say I was solution focused. In fact, I had a crib board. I had a clipboard with the questions in front of me saying, ask about pre-session change, um, ask about what people want to achieve, ask scaling, ask exceptions, and I'd have all these things written down. It was kind of solution focused by rote, solution focused by script, and I don't think I gave people a very good deal really. Towards the end of about 96, 97, I was about to move away from London, and I'd become quite enamored with the solution focused approach by then. And I think it was 96 for the first time. Chris asked me to come and do a presentation at one of their local conferences. One of Chris Iverson asked me to do a presentation at one of the local conferences. I think it was called Mental Health and Solution Focus, or something like that. Lots of people there. I was incredibly flattered and um, very very nervous, and did a presentation. I did a presentation based on all the things that we did in substance misuse, about getting people to do assessments and the questions we asked and the risk assessment and all that, and threw that all away, and asked what people would hope to achieve. And I did it by quite a visual way with lots of flip charts, and I got people to hold all these flip charts and threw them away, and it was great. And it went down very well, and I was very pleased with myself. I felt I'd done a good job, and I was pretty happy. So I'd been doing SF then by 3 years or so, and I went and had a cup of tea with Chris at the break, and I said, "How did it go, Chris?" He said, "Oh, yeah, 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 it was very good, Paul, very good." And I was like, I'm starting to grow, and he said, "It's just a shame it wasn't very solution focused," and I was devastated. I was absolutely devastated, and I was speechless. Which, if people know me, that's almost unheard of. Um, so I thought, wow, here's a guy who's asked me to come and do something. He said it's very good, but it's not solution focused. And I asked him why, and we had a discussion about it. And those discussions have moved on some many years later, and I still regard Chris as one of the leaders, and as a friend and somebody I've learned from over the years. And he's given me some really good feedback over the years. But that was my first example, I guess, of being called a heretic doing something that wasn't very solution focused. And I think the bit about that wasn't so solution focused was, and it's something I concentrated on, was really getting down to a problem free talk and exchanging ideas and putting more of me into the session than I had done before, or than many solution focused therapists did. So that was a kind of start place. I'm going to probably leave this video here because it gives you an introduction of kind of how long I've been doing SF for, and the fact I was probably a little bit heretical from the very start. And in the next session, I'm going to talk about, I suppose, my formal learning around SF and going off to practice in another part of England, being part of the UK Association for Solution Focused Practice, and doing the first Masters MA in Solution Focused Therapy at Birmingham University under Bill O'Connell. If there's anything you think I should answer in the next video, or any questions you've got for me, please feel free to leave comments underneath. I don't have a script. There's nothing here. I'm just speaking from the top of my head. As we get further into these videos, I will be taking some of the themes that came out of the recordings that myself and my three colleagues had, which will indicate some of the direction of where this series will go. It may be 20, it may be 25, it may be 30 videos. I hope you'll bear with me, and I hope if you find something useful, you let me know. I hope if I'm not meeting needs and I need to answer some questions, you'll let me know that too. Thanks very much for watching and bearing with me for 11 minutes and 25 seconds. See ya.